Hello and happy month of soccer
You're talking to me or you're talking to your listeners, Asla?
to you. I
Every
think
month,
we're,
every month is a month of soccer for me.
I know, but I feel like this is a very special month. Like you wake up and then you go to bed with soccer every 2 hours. There's a
Yep.
match. So
I think this is most certainly the month where America works out how much Alexi Lalas is too much Alexi Lalas, and everybody comes to their own conclusion.
that's true. I just read the results of your incredible, survey among U.S. soccer fans. I have my parts that I'm surprised, but what are the parts of that survey that surprised you actually?
Yeah, so the survey from Sea to Shining FC is a study that we did at the Men in Blazers Media Network in partnership with YouGov. We surveyed over 9,000 American football fans and learned so bloody much, to be candid. What I wanted to do, I've lived in America since 1994. The Men's World Cup here was meant to turn America into a football loving nation. It did, but much slower than we ever thought. The Men's World Cup is coming back in 2026 and should finish the job that 94 started. They thought, I think the organisers, that it would be an overnight success, that soccer would sweep the nation, a bit like a pogo stick or a yo-yo. But instead, it's been slow and steady. And our report, which is available at meninblazers.com/survey, what we tried to do was to work out, number one, there's an enormous fan base here now. There really is. That's the number one finding of the thing, is that there is an obsessive, diverse, massive, passionate, soccer loving fan base here who live for football, mostly the Premier League, Champions League,
Mm.
Liga MX, and the women's game. They love it truly, madly, deeply. That American love affair is very, very real. But I think the fascinating thing is how it's different to the European fandom, which is born of geography. If you grew up in Liverpool, you support Liverpool or
Yeah.
Everton, the two teams that are there. If you grew up in Barcelona, there's only really one team that you're going to support, and it's passed down generationally. Here, the American fan base, which is super young, I mean, super young, it's like 18 to 30, boomers will come for you next. But this is a young audience. They're not monogamous. We have pioneered, Asla, multi hyphenate fandom.
I know.
And what's fascinating is they don't just support one team, they find room in their heart for two or three. There's no cognitive dissonance in supporting multiple teams. 32% support two teams. A remarkable 46% of fans support three or more. I'd love to know about the 3% of respondents who follow more than six teams. I don't know how they have the time. Do you?
Yeah, I don't know, but you know what's so interesting? I constantly cover European soccer teams looking at US as a big market to grow their business and fandom. So this is great news for them. Not only, Premier League can grow their business, La Liga can grow its business, Bundesliga can grow their business. This is a great opportunity actually for everyone.
That's a really important point. And we did this report so that teams, leagues, brands who are pouring into the sport can do it in a more thoughtful, strategic way with the power of storytelling. Like that comes through in this survey. I mean, it's fascinating. Americans change their team loyalties. Football supporters in England have an adage, which is some version of you can change your hairstyle, you can change your home address, you can change your romantic partner, but you can never, ever change the team that you support. Here, 12% of survey respondents have said that they've changed the team they support in the last 5 years. So if they find that their team is disappointing them or they're relegated, which means they get pushed down into the equivalent of AAA from the big leagues, or if a
Mhm.
team stops resonating with them emotionally, they just move on to another, which means that every team, if they engage the power of storytelling, can make a case. And your point is so right, Asla, that when we meet Americans, and right now we're touring the nation, doing live shows. I was just in LA last night doing a live show to kick off Copa. And when we are with our fans out in these theaters, I'm going to Kansas City, we're going to Atlanta this week, DC,
Wow.
Charlotte. When we are in the field, and we always afterwards go to a bar, meet all of our our listeners, raise a Michelob Ultra with them, and we'll say to them, "Who do you support?" And the common refrain is, Manchester City are my Premier League team. Dortmund are my German team. In Italy, I love AC Milan now. Christian Pulisic plays for them, and I love the Washington Spirit in the National Women's Soccer League. And that is the common refrain. Americans, when it comes to football, have a big heart for many, many teams.
Yeah. And I remember, I think there was a recent Premier League event, and I remember so many fans there were changing shirts, and they're like, I like this team and that team. Were you there? I think you told me this story, actually. You were like telling me this story somewhere. And then I was in Milan for the AC Milan, Inter Milan, the last, big, Derby della Madonnina. And they were selling these, scarves where one side is the Milan, the other is the Inter.
And I was the famous told, half and half scarf.
Yeah, half and half of scarf. Half and half of scarf. Who buys the half and half of scarf? No real fan buys half and half scarf. Only people who are either team curious or tourists or somebody who's like, oh, I'm just here for the, for the experience of it. But can you even sell that to any real fans? No, but you can sell that to American fans who are like interested in multiple experiences and multiple teams, it seems to me.
I adore you. And this is one of the findings, which is the most fascinating to me. And it's in the report itself, which you can download from our website. The last finding is about the travel proclivities of the American fan, and it is utterly astonishing. We asked, and I'm blown away by this. We asked about attending live soccer games in person, and the amazing thing about the American fan, how truly, madly, deeply they act upon their fandom. Over half of respondents said that they attend an MLS match at least yearly. Over one quarter said they go to an NWSL match, the Women's League, at least once a year. 35% of respondents go and check out lower league games. Those are all domestic, but an astonishing 28% of the 9,000 plus respondees to the survey said that they attend a Premier League game religiously every year, which is just staggering. I think there's no greater testament to the centrality of soccer, the depth of passion, and the willingness to act upon it than that.
And also, I think it shows us, it's a little bit of a Taylor Swift example, right? It's cheaper for me to go to Europe and watch an amazing soccer game than perhaps watch one here, especially if Messi is playing. Let's talk about Messi a little bit, because your survey has some incredible points, but it was incredible to see all the stadiums are filled. When he's visiting around the country, ticket prices are super high. So for that price, I can also go see Mbappe in Paris, or I can see, I don't know, Jude in Madrid, and I have a great meal out of it afterwards and just come home. Why wouldn't I travel for soccer?
And a great narrative. And you get a half and half scarf, Asla. What could be better than that? But anyway, when you think about that, 28% of that 9,000 are traveling over to England, where the dollar is really powerful. That's a lot of half and half scarves. You and I are in the wrong business. We should be in the half and half scarf business. But yeah, I mean, Messi is a feature of the report. We look at, number one, we look at a couple of things that are fascinating. We look at how the power of buying an American player can change the way a European team is perceived, followed, and emotionally connected to within the United States. The data in the report on AC Milan's profile instantly that they signed Christian Pulisic, the leading US men's player, the pride of Hershey, Pennsylvania, is staggering. But you can see the Messi effect, how just one man utterly eclipses his entire league. Not just him, but Inter Miami have become, for respondents, so much bigger than MLS itself. And the counter effect is that the Premier League is so astonishingly large, such a juggernaut, the English Premier League, because Americans love the best. And this is a very odd sport where the NBA is the best. It's American. NFL is the best. It's right here in America. The best is the Premier League of the club game week to week to week. And an overwhelming majority of American fans, 89%, say they follow that league daily or weekly. 69% of respondents follow elite European competition, the Champions League, daily or weekly. The remarkable thing is when you see this report and you see where the attention of the American fan base on the men's side is really focused, that's the challenge for MLS. It's fighting for attention, it's fighting for bandwidth in its own backyard. And if you speak to people in football, it's really a matter of when now. The elite teams of Spain, the elite teams of Italy, and ultimately, if they do it, the Premier League will too start to play real games, not just
Yeah.
training games or pre-season games in the United States. It's going to be a fascinating shift in the tectonic plates of fandom even further.
Yeah. Well, Seferin was, I think, saying something about Champions League final being played in a US location one day. Wasn't that? So we heard about that.
He came on our show solely so that he could say that. They had his office reach out. He said, "I'm in New York. I'd love to come on the Men in Blazers Media Network." I said, "Great." We had a long conversation. It's up on YouTube, and then just halfway through, he said, "And by the way, we know exactly where the next 3 Champions League finals are going to be. But after that, New York, why not? I'd love it." And that in that moment, I was like, "Oh Lord, that's exactly why he wanted to come on," which is remarkable for American fans. I think the European fans received that news rather harder. They did not like that, and he had to walk it back a little bit. But it's a true conundrum for the American leagues, because once that dam breaks and major games are played over here, there's a whole new shift in the realities of what's possible. There's a whole food chain of football, and this report, this survey, kind of reveals that food chain, that hierarchy in the American fans' eyes.
Yeah. And we know, we're going to have a lot of practice, right? We're going to have Copa America, and then we have next year Club World Cup, then we're going to host the World Cup. By the time we experience all of those big soccer focused events, I think we'll be ready to host a Champions League final. And perhaps we'll do a better job than Istanbul or Paris or London. Who knows? Maybe we would control the crowd a little more tactfully when things go, a little rowdy.
Even what you're talking about, it's just a whole new reality. When we started, part of the reason we did the survey was that when I started the Men in Blazers Media Network back in 2010, football here was seen externally like space to Captain Kirk as the final frontier. And the fact that we can sit here now, just 14 years later, and talk confidently, Messi is playing now, played last night in Atlanta, 70,000 fans plus. It looked like, honestly, the game was being played in Argentina. It was delirious. Colombia played the United States in Washington, D.C., had like 50,000 plus, mostly Colombian fans. Brazil played the U.S. in Florida.
Record-breaking crowd.
Yeah, record-breaking crowd, mostly of Brazilian fans. It is remarkable, these scenes that we would never have believed back then, but they're now almost routine as America becomes what I thought was a normal footballing nation. But when you read this report from Sea to Shining FC, you still see what is utterly singular about American fans, and they are distinctive, and they are unique in terms of the way they've grown. Without that this fandom is largely, there is an element of multi-generational fans. I can't do an American accent, but like my grandfather, supported Manchester United. My dad did, my mum did. I support Manchester United. But most of it is fandom that is fresh, that has grown since 2014 when NBC started to broadcast the Premier League and made it utterly accessible. And so this fandom is utterly unique. And I think this survey tries to tell that story.
I moved here in 2016, and I was told pretty, quickly, you'll never cover football, soccer in this country. Nobody's interested in what you know. And here we are having this conversation. I'm a huge fan of the show, but also we both, probably trying to watch the Euros in the corner of our screen. This is happening in real time. But one thing that was always very surprising to me, how much soccer they played and how little they knew about it because of what you just said. They did not have access to watching the good, beautiful, jogo bonito, beautiful game.
Stuff.
Now the good stuff is everywhere. You can watch it anytime.
I'll say this: this is what has changed fundamentally. Is that baseball's golden era was in the golden age of the radio. when across the United States, people would tune in to hear how Branch Rickey and Mickey Mantle did that night. The NFL grew up as television exploded, the perfect televisual sport, 87 cameras, action replays, commercial breaks for beer runs. And what's happened is the rise of the internet and also streamers. Every single streamer has realized there's a deeply connected, emotionally invested audience in football that they can convert. So you have Paramount Plus dealing with the Champions League wonderfully. You've got HBO, they've invested in the US team. NBC are in the Premier League business. Fox are in the big events, the World Cups, men's and women's. And so everybody owns a tiny piece of it. It's utterly fragmented, but it's all available. And then the internet allows you to follow Liverpool from Los Angeles as if you were as close to the stadium. As a Scouser, you can follow Arsenal from Alabama just as closely, or Chelsea women from Chicago just as closely. And so football has become soccer has become just the perfect sport for the internet streaming age. And that's part of the reason that it is driven to such a dizzying height of popularity in this moment.
Yeah, Gen Z, they love it. And like you said, they're not club agnostic. They love multiple clubs. They love the players, which makes it also the storytelling part of your survey says if you tell a good story, they follow you. So I think we can talk hours about this, but one last, commentary from you to wrap it up. And I think I want to know a few things. Who's going to win the Copa America and who's going to win the Euros?
So for the Copa America, my heart says the United States of America, because even though I sound very English, I'm more American than Kenny Powers is American. So my heart says that. But honestly, my head says to my heart, what are you talking about? And the joy for the US will be as if they can win one knockout game against a very, very, very good opponent and feel that confidence.
Yeah.
Colombia looks so unbelievably bloody good. On a long 23 match unbeaten streak, and they played delirious, joyous football like a collective smiting fist. And the Euros, my lord, I'll say America again, even though they're not in it, just because I'm deluded and delirious and I'm in a football fever dream. But if I was a betting man, this tournament is in Germany. The Germans are looking deeply, deeply inevitable. And it would be a great thing, honestly. One of the joys of the tournament is when football is bigger than football, when it transcends football. And the real win for the Euros thus far, Asla, in this divided Europe, this complex Europe, this Europe at war, a Europe that's fraught with elections that seem to be sliding towards the far right wing, to see joy, to see unity, or even to see the illusion of unity at this moment. That's been the real win of the Euros, just seeing Europeans come together, even if just for 1 month, and be utterly besotted, deliriously joyous in a common narrative. To watch that again, ultimately, I think we all win.
That's a wonderful, wonderful way to think about football. Football unites, and here we are talking about it in this beautiful Friday afternoon. Have a great weekend full of football, and I can't wait to talk to you again at the end of the tournament. Let's see who's right.
Thank you for getting me on. And that report, Sea to Shining Sea, you can get it off our website. I'm going to give you the URL one more time, meninblazers.com/survey. Always be selling, Asla. You're
Always.
amazing. Thanks for having me on. Courage.
Thank you. Let me